Hey there, and welcome to my strategy guide for Archimonde on normal and heroic difficulty, as relevant to healers. Archimonde has several distinct phases with abilities changing depending on his health percentage. So getting right into it, generally the beginning of phase 1 requires spot healing, and raid healing becomes more intense towards the end. To begin, he'll summon a Doomfire Spirit every 45 seconds, which targets a random player and a line of fire moves towards them. Positioning in phase 1 may vary, but for example, if your raid moves from left to right, then you want to position the fire to the left when fixated so that the fire doesn't intersect or block the path of your raid. Moving this over already existing fire is ideal. If hit by the fire, players get a debuff that does moderate fire damage over 8 seconds. Next, and every minute thereafter, Archimonde casts Allure of Flames, which moves all active fire to the location of a few random players. Your raid should stack up just before this comes in and spread before it lands. The fire spreads slightly after landing, so make sure you move far enough. Next, once per minute, he targets a random player with a spell called Shadowfel Burst, shooting this player and anyone within 8 yards of them into the air. When affected players land, they take damage which needs to be soaked by the rest of the raid moving under the affected area. Because of this mechanic, in this phase you generally need to spread 8 yards unless Allure of Flames is coming in. If multiple people get shot up, damage reduction cooldowns may be needed to avoid a wipe. Your tanks will be swapping due to a debuff that increases the shadow damage they take, so be ready to cooldown them if they need it. At 85% health, he gains a spell called Desecrate. This summons spires from the ground that deal damage if you're on top of where they emerge, and AoE damage to the raid every 3 seconds. Try not to stand near these. The damage increases by 25% per spire that exists, so raid damage increases the longer this phase persists. Additionally, your rel spawns orbs that apply a debuff to anyone in 15 yards when someone runs through them, which increases the movement speed and makes players immune to shadow damage. Use these to negate the debuff you get from Hellfire Deathcallers, which increases the shadow damage that you take. Moving on to phase 2, raid damage in this phase is spiky but manageable. At 75% health, his abilities change. He continues to cast Allure of Flames, and your tanks will still be swapping because of Deathbrand, but the other abilities are gone. Instead, he casts 2 new ones. Shackled Torment spawns chains on 3 players. To break the chains, players must move 30 yards from where they were standing when they got the debuff. Breaking all 3 chains at once can easily wipe the raid. DBM gives you an order you can follow to stagger breaking them, or someone like your raid leader can call it out. Raid-wide damage during this ability can be large and may require some cooldowns. Periodically, one player will get Wrought Chaos, whilst another gets Focus Chaos. Basically, a beam of green light will spawn after a few seconds between these 2 players, originating from the one with Wrought Chaos, i.e. the one with the arrow, damaging anyone in between and beyond the player with Focus Chaos, i.e. the one without the arrow. These 2 players must move to ensure nobody else is hit, especially tanks. Ideally, the person without the arrow should move to the edge of the room. But even if you don't have the debuff and it's not on you, you should still move to make sure you're not in between these 2 players. At 55% health, Felborne Overfiends and Dreadstalkers will spawn. Every 25% health lost from the Overfiends will cause them to do raid-wide AoE damage with Flames of Argus. If chains are being broken at the same time as this comes out, a healing cooldown might be required. The Dreadstalkers teleport to players and interrupt their casts with Consume Magic, so make sure you move from these. Now moving on to phase 3, the healing in this phase is very intense, so you're going to want to be pushing your mana to its max and using every cooldown available to you. At 40% health, he loses Allure of Flames and the tank debuff, but retains Shackles and Light Beams. In return, he gains Demonic Feedback, which does raid-wide AoE damage every 20-ish seconds. Damage from this is amplified if anyone is within 6 yards of one another, so stay spread. He gains a spell called Nether Banish. He casts this on his current tank target every minute or so. After 7 seconds, anyone in 8 yards of this tank will be sent into the Twisting Nether. You want to send 5 people in my opinion, including a tank and a healer. If you don't send at least 3, Archimonde will heal for 5% of his health and this can easily wipe you. After they're sent inside, it leaves behind a massive nether tear. Don't stand in or near these. They spawn adds called Living Shadows that deal massive single target damage and reduce healing taken by 40% if they reach their target. It's certainly your DPS's problem to kill these ASAP, but you can stun them, so try not to let them reach you. If you're assigned to be sent into the nether, help DPS the void stars and don't let them reach anybody. They will knock their target off the platform if they do, and you can't survive this. Don't stand in the AoE circles on the ground. You have quite a few seconds to move before they start dealing damage, but the damage is quite heavy, so make sure you're not getting hit by these. The main ad does need to be interrupted, but you should be sending a melee DPS with you into the Nether, so this shouldn't really be your problem. When this main ad is dead, click on the collapse star thingy to leave immediately. Don't be too close to the collapsing ad as it dies though, since it does AoE damage and it's just damage you don't need to take. The range that you have to click on the star to leave is quite large. If you have problems finding or reaching the tank in time to get into the Nether, remember it always targets the tank that has the boss's aggro, so look directly in front of him for a massive green circle rune thing and stand on it. Finally, at 25% health, he gains Reign of Chaos, bombarding the floor with massive meteors. Save speed increases to move from these as fast as possible. I recommend using some cooldowns here since the raid damage can be really insane. Reign of Chaos will also summon 3 Infernal Doombringers that if they reach each other will heal each other, so they must be tanked separately. And if they don't die before their energy bar becomes full, they will do massive AoE damage and probably wipe your raid. Throughout phase 3, if any raid-wide damage is stacked with poorly timed shackles breaking, then you will probably wipe if you don't use a major cooldown or even 2. So that's it for this guide. Good luck in the encounter and feel free to give the video a thumbs up if you found it useful, comment if you have any questions or suggestions, and subscribe for more.